What should I title this video? I might be an anti-vaxxer, the tragedy of the commons and how it relates to the coronavirus, and quarantine, the relationship between staying home and getting vaccinated. Well, I couldn't make up my mind, but you can get the gist of what I want to talk about from those possible titles. Welcome to Just Thinking Out Loud. My name is Desi-Rae.
Oh my god, what am I doing?
Ever since the quarantines have been going on and some people were against that, wanted everything to open up, and then some people were like, no, you have to stay home for the good of all the people who might die. Just because it's not your possible loved one that would be injured doesn't mean that people aren't out there getting hurt. And then from the flip side, just because you're okay and secure and you can think about not going out and working doesn't mean that everybody else can do that. And we're also seeing how much unemployment there is. I also found a great website from CNN, yes, CNN, that shows which states are opening up. It's just 2 from what I understand. Right now there was a big drama about Wisconsin. I personally think that there's going to be a second wave, but I also don't think you should stop people from working. And I have been thinking about this for a few weeks now. I do think that the parallels between getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated in order to promote herd immunity within a population and using social cohesion or social norms to make that happen, such as not being able to attend school or just travel in and out of the country. As someone who travels, like, you have to get vaccinated. However, I think that shouldn't be forced on any individual because it's their own body, and I think it has to do with your body and not having a vaccine if you don't want it. Now, I don't talk about this on my channel because it's a controversial topic and I just don't want people to think I'm weird, I guess. But I absolutely think it's wrong for you to force other people to get vaccinated in order to help the rest of the population. I've been vaccinated multiple times, like in my adulthood, not just when I was a child, but I also had vaccines when my parents gave me vaccines when I was a child. And as it relates to this coronavirus and quarantine situation, I've been quarantining myself before anybody was saying you should quarantine yourself. And I do it mostly for my protection, but I would also do it in order to stop other people from getting potentially hurt if I could afford to do it. And I think that question of weighing the costs and the benefits for each individual person, it comes down to their personality. I think that this directly relates to the tragedy of the commons, even though usually that's talked about in terms of obvious resources, but it's very, very similar. The tragedy of the commons is if you have land that isn't privately owned by some people, but there are resources that can be taken from this land. I'm using land in this example, but it doesn't have to be land. Some kind of resource that's public, maybe the air, and then if it's not privately owned, then people can take from it and get the benefits without getting some of the costs. And the rational thing to do in that scenario is to take what you can get and then, I don't know, somebody deals with it, because no one has property rights assigned to them that says you can get benefits and costs, and so you will take care of it in order to manage those things. I'm going to link to some Khan Academy videos that talk about the tragedy of the commons and also about collective decision making. If you're really into that philosophically, you can go and look at that. The solutions that humans have come up with to solve this issue of public goods being privately benefited from but the cost being borne publicly include taxing people or having permits so that in order to access it you have to pay a little something and then potentially profit when you extract what you want, but you're paying. At some point you're going to bear some of the costs. For the quarantine situation and for other situations, but I'm applying it to this one, that sometimes isn't feasible because there's too much tracking that has to go on for you to figure out how much of a cost someone is bearing from someone else not acting in the best interest of everyone else but acting in their self-interest. How would you track that? I also immediately think about surveillance if you're trying to figure out who stayed home and who's going out there, and then trying to like tax them progressively depending on how much they're possibly contributing to other people getting sick. But I think you could very easily flip it around, because for those mostly elderly people who are worried about getting sick, they're getting the benefits of everybody else staying home, but they're not receiving the costs of lost income, lost everything, a lot of life being on hold. So I don't think the problem can actually be solved. I've been racking my brain thinking about how you could actually either allocate costs and benefits across population, but I just don't think it's really feasible, or which side is more right, but I don't think one side is more right. I think the way that people act in these kinds of situations, it always comes down to privately getting a benefit. Either the people who are highly susceptible to getting sick, having everybody else stay home, they're getting the benefit, or if everybody else goes out there and work, then that can harm other people who might not have very strong immune systems. I think it very much highlights, which I've been mentioning a lot in my videos lately, how we're not just like islands and we are cohabiting and interacting with each other. At the same time, I absolutely think, not just on principle, but in practice, I think that it is wrong to force someone to limit themselves for you, limit themselves for the good of everybody else, particularly when these goods aren't super obvious, as in like you're not going to go out there and like murder a bunch of people, but it's very nuanced how people are being affected. Because even if you go out there and if we're talking about the vaccine case, don't get vaccinated, or if we're talking about the quarantine case, don't quarantine yourself, other people can react to that in ways that are beneficial to them. It's not as if they don't have a choice of how to respond to that either. And because there's a lot of social dynamics that goes on with this, so if someone doesn't want to cooperate, then they just can't attend school with your children, for example, or they can't come into your place of establishment because they refuse to wear a mask, which is like a soft version of quarantining yourself. And that kind of brings me to one particular issue that I also couldn't find a solution to, which was, even though I don't think that you should force anyone to vaccinate themselves, I don't, and it's been hard for me to admit that publicly. I mean, I've admitted it to myself a long time ago, but it's something I've avoided talking about. What about children? I don't know how to respond to that, because in some cases you could consider it child abuse if you don't vaccinate your child, but you can also consider it child abuse if you do vaccinate your child and like that vaccine that works for everybody else doesn't work for them. I always think, yes, it sounds great when you talk about functioning adults, etc., but when it comes to children, it's kind of hard to figure that out. I just don't have an answer to it, because I also think this brings up the question of even bringing children onto the earth, giving them life, bringing them into the world. The situation that they're brought up in is not under their control. I am in no way like anti-natalist. It might sound like that, but I'm not. I'm just like thinking about it logically, because I also think you're denying them that opportunity too. If you're going to think of it like that, then you can't flip it one way or the other and say, oh well, life is bad, and you're like giving them this bad thing. You can also flip it and say, well, life is good, and you're denying them this good thing. That was a tangent. The point I'm trying to make is that I have a specific principle regarding freedom and liberty of association. So I would say that I am more on the side of people being able to go out there and begin working again. By the way, I think that there are people who are in both of those groups but would think that the other group doesn't make any sense. So you'd have someone who wants to go out there and do what they want, get back to work, you know, take care of themselves at the expense of other people, but then they'll be weirded out by people who say that they don't want forced vaccines. I personally am against forced vaccines, not necessarily coercion, like if you want to enter our domain, then you need to do this for the good of everybody else. So I do think that some ostracism is okay, because that's other people responding to how that individual person is behaving. Ideally, I would like to find a way to figure out how to allocate the costs and the benefits accurately to individuals, and I don't know how you do that. So I guess that in sum, is there a solution? I would like to find that solution, because I don't think one side or the other, except for the force thing, I don't think it's wrong to ask that of people, either side, because what might be good for one person isn't good for the other, but we're all sharing some kind of resource. That's what I want to end with. How do you solve this problem? I have no idea, and usually I like to come to a conclusion, but I don't actually have one. It was just something that I was thinking about. I've been thinking about it for a while, and now that all these openings are gonna happen, I think there's gonna be a second wave. I think that will be horrible. I also think it's horrible if people are being forced to suspend their lives for the benefit of others who aren't like compensating them in some way. Actual individuals should be doing the compensation, not the government. But like, I think that for it to be just, which I don't know how to do. The transference of I'm getting benefit and you're bearing the cost, I'm gonna give you, reimburse you for that, it should be like done accurately, and I have no idea how to do that. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you for watching. Definitely let me know what you think, because I'm going to link to those videos from Khan Academy, and there are different solutions that people have come up with, but none of them seem to actually be fair. Some of them wouldn't apply to a situation like the vaccine, because you can't give a permit. It's not feasible to track everybody accurately. Thank you for watching. Again, my name is Desi-Rae, Just Thinking Out Loud. Please take a minute to donate at justthinkingoutloud.tv/donate. I'd really appreciate it. You can help keep the show going and show your support. justthinkingoutloud.tv/donate. I'm going to be saying that a lot in the future. I hope that you have a great day, as always. I really do. Thank you for your time. Bye. I think there are probably people who intersect in those two sets, but oh god.